it's Peggy here. This lesson, I fell in love with it, is a variation on a theme that I learned with Elizabeth Beringer. It actually comes from her series, Embodied Learning, Focus on the Hips and Low Back. I was teaching it in the gym, and I love this lesson. So hopefully you will love it as much as I do. You'll start first scanning on your back, and then you'll roll to a side. Follow the lesson. Lie on your back. And what if this process of lying on your back to sense and feel your contact with the floor without a judgment was a regular practice you did several times a day? It's possible to learn how to do it sitting in a chair or standing. It's how we begin to tune into ourselves. And yes, if there is some sense of not so nice, I'm not as comfortable, does that take all of your attention? What would you do to make yourself more comfortable? And then could you direct your attention to another place that maybe isn't noisy, where you can go, it's quiet there. It's noisy there. It's quiet there. So you're directing your attention to an area where you want more of that quality instead of to the area you want less of that. And listen to your breathing. How nice is it to return to the floor? And if I was going to give you a choice that you would lie on one side, don't go there yet, but discern from the contact you're making with the floor. If one side there's a little bit more weight compared to the other? Is there always the same side you bias to? And slowly roll your head a little from one side to the other, just to feel, what was the size I rolled? Was it a little for me? My little? Did it give me information? Did I take it to the limit and stop? And then have to begin again? None of these choices of how we do what we do are wrong. But we're paying attention. Do I always do it that way? And what information does that give me? And then you bring the head back in the center and rest. Now, from the information you're gathering, whether you're aware of it or not, how you lie on your back, the sense of weight, where areas rest a little bit more into the floor, or is it a sense of being pushed into the floor? And from the way you rolled your head, did that give you information that there is a preference or a bias that you might choose as to which side you would roll to? And then very slowly, bring your feet to stand, soften the knees, soles of feet stand on the mat, and begin the process of rolling onto one side. When you arrive at that side, you'll have your hips and knees bent, ballpark 90 degrees. You may start in the beginning using the bottom arm as a pillow to rest your head on, or you use head support, or a combination of. And you just create a scan here. And you get comfortable. and you listen again. You've changed your relationship in gravity. And what does that have to do with where you feel areas of you lean or depress more into the floor? Can you compare the side you're lying on compared to the side towards the ceiling, the opposite side? Listen to the contact you make through your ribs, the distance from the shoulder you're lying on and the bottom hip side you're lying on, and then compare that to the top side, the top shoulder and the distance between the top shoulder and the top hip, and the configuration of your ribs on the top side compared to the ribs on the bottom side. If you close your eyes and you rest for a moment, can you feel gravity already influences your eyes? Can you feel that they are falling a little bit, the weight of them in the direction of the floor? We notice these little things. And slowly begin to roll your head a little towards the floor and then back to the middle and towards the ceiling, a little. It's still a rolling of your head. And you notice, do you feel that elsewhere? Is that movement of the rolling of your head traveling through you? It's subtle, but you're listening for it. Or is it just a sensation in your neck? And the idea is to go slow and gentle so that you can begin to listen. Is a movement, unless it's your intention not to allow it to travel through you, is there a passive, subtle response that you become aware of? And now very slowly, you're going to make a very gentle movement. The top leg stays bent, so too the bottom. And very slowly, you're going to begin to slide the top leg. Once it slides in front of the bottom leg and rests on the floor, and you pause there a moment. Did that change your configuration on the floor, in your ribs, with your head? Any place you can discern something shifted. And then slowly, how would you gently, without a lot of effort, slide that top bent leg to return back onto the bottom bent leg, and then slide that top bent leg back behind the bottom bent leg, spooning it. I'm going to use that terminology, it spoons it. So that the knee, whether it rests in front or back behind, lies on the floor.
Or doesn't.
It will if you pay attention to how you organize yourself. So notice, let's do this. Bring the knee back on top of the bottom bent knee. Go back and slide the top bent knee in front of the bottom bent knee. Stay there.
You said back.
Yeah. So, there's one in front and one behind. Okay, so maybe I'll refer to it as yeah. But it's so that we understand. And I can change my words.
No.
Now, notice with the top bent knee resting on the floor in front, roll your head a little towards the floor and towards the ceiling. But it's rolling. So it's not lifting, it's rolling. That the surface of some portion of your skull always make contact. If it's on the bottom arm, maybe it rolls on the arm. If it's on a pad, it rolls on the pad. If you feel it's struggling and it's away from the floor, so you're really lifting it, use an arm or a head support. And notice, can you roll your head in either direction and it still allows that top bent knee to rest on the floor comfortably? Good. And slowly allow the knee that's in front to come back on top of the bottom bent knee. Now I'm just going to refer to it as the knees. They're going to stay bent, so we can leave that out of it, okay? And go ahead and slide that top knee behind. And notice what you first did with your head. And now roll your head in the opposite direction for some of you. And see if you roll your head in the opposite direction if the knee comes to the floor. Which direction do you roll your head that allows, without any strain or tugging or stretch sensation, the knee to rest on the floor? Is it when you look towards the ceiling or when you look towards the floor? For some, once you found the way to roll your head that allowed the knee to come on the floor, can you feel the difference the way you roll your head? And now all of you find a way to get that knee to the floor. Lovely. Begin to slide and glide that knee that now is behind back on top of the bottom knee and go in front and back, slow, so that this gliding of the knee, but the knee is always going to touch the floor. And the idea is that it can stay close enough to the bottom knee that you might feel its contact. You'll decide. But now you're just sliding that top knee forward of the bottom on the floor and back. And you're making it as smooth and gentle a movement. And you allow your head to move in the direction you think, you feel, makes that knee easier to rest on the floor. And you just keep sliding back and forth, and you start to compare. When is it that it just feels less tug, pull on that hip, on your back, depending on where your head goes? I'll give you a clue. If when you slide the top knee back, you allow your head to first roll towards the floor, see if that feels, without having to add in a second or a third step, simpler. And it's possible that when you slide the top knee forward, the head could roll a little to the ceiling. Doesn't have to, but listen to the relationship when a knee is going forward or back through your spine. And it's a little bit. Notice if the patterns you're finding for yourself make sense. I'm saying that when the knee goes back behind, the head goes to the floor. And when the knee comes forward, try letting the head go a little towards the ceiling. See if you can play that pattern. It may not be some of the pattern you're looking at. I'll describe again. As you slide the knee forward, you can look a little towards the ceiling. As you slide the knee back behind you, you look a little towards the floor. But it's the timing of the movement. That's it. There's a little bit of a twist happening in the spine. And find your way of sliding that leg forward and back with the coordination of your head. Doesn't mean you can't do it another way. And then use one of these movements to roll to your back and rest. Can you just roll? You could almost imagine a dream of a cartoon like Roadrunner or Running, and that you're just sliding one knee in front and behind, in front and behind, as a walking or a running pattern or a jogging pattern. And that your spine moves and your head moves. That all of you participates. Please roll back onto your same side, the side you chose, your preference. When the legs are stacked, slowly slide the top knee behind and let it rest there. And then very slowly, that back knee, that back leg that is bent, begin to elongate it straight down like an ostrich or a stork that stands on one leg. The back one. So it's the top knee that's resting back behind. That's it. And then you straighten it, and then you slide it back to rest on the floor. And many times, slowly, you elongate or straighten that back leg, which is the top leg. You straighten it, and you bend it. Many times. More important, listening to what happens to the rest of you. What happens to your ribs on the floor as you elongate that leg? And what happens when you bend it back to rest on the floor behind? And that's what you're playing with. Something through you changes. Is there a little bit of lifting in certain places? Is there also a little bit of rolling in certain places? Where do you notice the movement? Does the head gently roll a little bit? Do you roll through ribs a little bit? From when you elongate the leg or you bend it?
What is your body telling you when it suddenly just wants to breathe deep?
To breathe deep. That you're not. And it's asking, yes, and honor it. Anytime you feel the desire, the need to breathe, you breathe. And then as you elongate the leg, allow yourself to look a little bit towards the ceiling and give up the position of being on your side and roll to your back and rest. One movement, if possible. Just let go of everything and roll out. There you go. Notice if the desire is, I got to correct myself and straighten myself, or if you feel, wow, and if you feel you got to do that, then you do what you got to do. And again, you breathe, you rest, notice your contact with the floor. And roll back onto your side. This time, you're going to again slide that top bent leg back behind. But you're going to keep it bent. And the only difference is, you're going to begin to redirect the back knee, and it'll affect the foot, to roll in the direction of the ceiling so that that foot comes to stand on the floor. You still stay on your side. That's it. But the whole foot, so if you want to slide the foot further up, you do, and then you slide it back so that the knee is spooning the bottom knee. Knee is on the floor. But if you're modifying it, and you know you're doing that, then you do that. The idea is that the bottom knee is passive. It's quiet. It stays on the floor. It's not bouncing off of the floor. And the top knee that is behind, you're simply doing this funny, it's a rotation, redirecting the knee to look towards the ceiling, which changes that whole leg in the hip joint. And it does a little something up through your lower back, but you still maintain a bias of lying on the side you chose. I like to call this a little bit of a swinging door. The knee swings open, and the knee swings closed to rest on the floor again. And you have every possibility to reposition your foot so it stands better when you swing that knee to open towards the ceiling, or you close it. Now continue the movement and play with it where you still stay on your side, but you could roll your head towards the ceiling. The knee stays bent at all times unless you are changing it. The top knee is bent, resting on the floor behind the bottom. And so you just swing the knee back to the floor. It's bent and it slides, the foot slides away, but not straight. There you go. And you do that many times. So continue the movement, but now change one little thing. Instead of rolling the head more towards the ceiling, as you bring the knee to stand, the foot to stand behind you, you roll your head a little bit more towards the floor. You're creating a differentiation. And you don't force. It's as you open the knee. One direction is you could roll your head towards the ceiling. That would encourage a little bit more of a rolling towards the back, but you're still on the side with the bottom knee resting on the floor. Another way is you, again, the same movement of that back knee to come to stand, the foot. You roll your head a little bit more towards the floor. Where is it different in your spine? And another way is you don't even let your head move. You just fixate on something in front of you. What's different in each of those three variations? Where do you feel the difference in you? Good. And the next time you draw that knee open, give up the constraint of lying on your side and roll to your back. Listen to how you do it. So many times I repeat the movement, I have you explore it so it becomes familiar. And then I give you variations. And of those variations, which variation leads you to roll to your back as one movement or two movements? And notice your contact with the floor, what that's doing. Contact, weight into the floor, breathing. And return to your side again. When you get to your side, slide the top knee back behind. Let it rest there. And now this time, the idea is that you keep the knee on the floor, but you gently want to lift that foot and lower leg in the direction of the ceiling. A little bit. And then you place it back down. That's it. And that's what you do. Several times. How do I breathe? Where do I feel a movement travel through me? Keeping it light and easy. Where would my head want to go more comfortably? And a little bit works great. The first moment you feel it's sort of not so clear and you want to push to do more, if you could resist doing that. Just wherever it went the first, you let it go and then you lower it. That's it. And it doesn't have to stay up there. You lift and you lower. No holding it up there. This is not a strength training exercise. This is just listen to the hinging and pivoting in your hip, your pelvis, your lower back. And then it lifts and it lowers. It lifts and it lowers. Good. Stack that knee back on top of the bottom knee and rest on your side at pause or two. Notice what you also do with your top hand or arm. What do you use? How do you use it that you feel it helps support? And again, return that top bent knee back behind. And these two movements that you've just explored, alternate them. Once you rotate the knee towards the ceiling, the foot comes to stand. Then you lower the knee to rest on the floor again. And then you take the foot and lower leg in the direction of the ceiling, pivoting, standing on the knee. You just alternate those two. And anything that you feel in you prefer, makes it easier, is the first thing that comes to mind, play with it. Where your head goes, what the top arm does, your eyes, and listen and sense and feel with a comfortable easiness your hip joint, your pelvis, your lower back, your spine, and is your breathing syncing itself comfortably with the movement, that you don't need to focus on a specific way of breathing. That's it. And you can play with different variations of where your head and eyes look. If there's a sense of rolling or twisting. And the whole time, the bottom knee rests quiet on the floor. Use this position in whichever direction that seems to you, feels. It would be the simplest to relinquish lying on my side and roll to your back and rest. So for a while, I'm keeping you on one side. We're doing this intentionally. Are you starting to notice a difference between your sides? A comparison of something is starting to awaken in your brain of differences? And that's what you're paying attention to. What's changing and different? And once more, please return to the same side. I promise we will get to the other side. But your brain is already firing patterns repetitively so that they're beginning to wire in. You'll need to practice more on your own, maybe when the Dropbox comes out this week, to notice, is it really starting to wire in? Meaning, it's becoming something more reliable, dependable, known. Hopefully, it exists with a sense of ease and comfort. It's associated with, oh, that's nice. I like that. The sensations that are evolving as a result of listening to yourself quietly. Go back and slide the top knee once in front, then once in back. The knee always wants to rest on the floor. What would you need to do in you? So whether you are sliding that knee forward or back, it is touching the floor. That's it. And then the next time you get that knee in front, keep it there. And with the knee in front, begin to slowly lift the foot and lower leg a little bit in the direction of the ceiling and place it back down. The knee rests in front, stays in front, and then from that position, you slowly pivot on that knee to lift where it's easy and comfortable, that foot and the lower leg a little in the direction of the ceiling. And you do that movement several times. But you pause in between. The bottom leg stays quiet on the floor. If that's difficult, you can even elongate the bottom leg a little bit so that it rests quiet. It doesn't have to be working. That's it. And you do it slow, small. You pause between each exploration so that it is not creating reps and sets, but to listen each time you do it. How do you breathe? Where does your head, your eyes go? Where could you make it simpler and easier? What is the sensation of ribs on the floor? Is there movement of ribs hugging or leaning more into the floor or rolling a little bit more into the floor? And then pause from that for a moment. If you're comfortable with the leg in front, keep it there. And now remember, movement is allowed. So now if I said, could you take that knee in front, the foot would slide a little bit in the direction so that the knee would go a little bit more towards the ceiling and the contact of the foot would come a little bit more in touch with the floor. So now we're reversing the movement of lifting the knee so that the foot pivots a little bit towards the floor. That's it. That's it. Do you use your top hand to push into the floor and help a little bit? Might that be a support that helps? How do you breathe when you do it? It's not that the foot has to come to stand. You're just beginning a gentle movement. If you feel any discomfort or pain, do less or imagine it. Just it could be, if you even begin the approximation of lifting, it could be as little as you're lifting only as much as a little tissue paper. Kleenex could be pulled out without tearing. That little for you, if that feels safer. What happens? Does something happen in the ball of the femur, the thigh bone, that sits into the hip, that as you begin the approximation of lifting that knee, does it move your pelvis back a little bit? There you go. That's it. And then what if I said, begin to alternate the movements of this foot, lower leg, once to lift and once to stand. So it's the same pattern we've done, but now you're doing it with this leg in front. And listen to what's different. Listen to the timing of your organization. You're all doing it lovely. Feel that your bones are actually acting like a fulcrum, almost like a pole vaulter, if that's an image that works for you, where it moves you. You just go slow and gentle, no force. And then use one of these directions to roll to your back and rest. You give up constraints, you let go, and you lie on your back and rest. You notice your contact with the floor. And not just the contact, but if I directed your attention specifically to your hips or your lower back, can you feel a difference between one side and the other? Sometimes we don't know what the difference is, but we go, oh. Do you rest with your legs spread comfortably, hip shoulder width apart? Or is that something that is very elusive? You think that's what you're doing, or maybe you don't because you choose not to. But we've all had sensations when we bring our legs, feet wider to the ballpark of hip shoulder width apart. It actually relaxes something in the muscles of the lower back, something in the groin, something in the thigh muscles, the adductor inner thigh muscles. Every one of you has had that sensation of, oh, that's nicer, and then we forget it. The learning is about remembering what we forget. Yeah. And now, slowly, roll to your other side. And if the other side isn't as comfortable for you, you have choice. One of the choices is you do almost nothing and roll to your back. Another choice is you imagine and then roll to your back when you need to. Now you know the patterns from the other side. The side you chose, which I'm presuming was the easier side for you. Simpler. Feel the difference in the contact you make with the floor simply by changing the side you're lying on. Where is it different? Is it different in the contact through your ribs? The distance from the shoulder to the pelvis? On the floor side compared to the ceiling side? Is it different in how your head rests on the floor or on your arm? Is there a place that you can think of, well, I think in this area it feels different? You might not know exactly what the difference is, but you're getting a sense and a feel, well, something's different. Why would the first side you chose be the one you chose? Where's the difference? Is it in ease or comfort? Contour of your spine? And very slowly, take the top leg bent and begin the process of sliding it forward, resting on the floor, and then back. But the idea is that it really rests on the floor in either direction. So you make sure that you move it, pause for a moment to let it rest, listen to the contact it makes with the floor, and then you slide it on top of the other knee and back. And all of the things that we tapped into on the other side, as far as in order for that knee to really come to the floor in either direction, forward or back, and rest, where is it available for your head to go that it sinks in with this resting of the knee on the floor? You may be able to do looking straight forward, rolling the head forward, rolling the head towards the ceiling, and all of them work. But what is the first one that doesn't require a slight shift? And you could think of a little pattern of walking or jogging where a leg is moving forward and back. You could think of cartoons. Roadrunner comes to mind for me all the time. As if your legs were oiled from a shower, lubrication, or the beach sunscreen, and they're just sliding one over the other in front and back. And listen to how the rest of you in your pelvis, your spine, your head, even this top arm or the bottom arm responds. Is there a relationship between the bottom half and the top half playing out? Are they both going in the same direction, or are they going in opposite directions? And then the next time you get that top leg back, keep it there. And begin the exploration of sliding that leg long, as if it were a stork or an ostrich or a flamingo who was going to stand on one leg. And then you slide it back up to rest on the floor behind. You slide it back down long. And you listen to the sliding of the leg long. What does that do to the upper torso? Through your pelvis and on up. Compared to when you bend the knee and slide it back to nestle or spoon the other leg. Does it change the weight of your head? In one direction, it feels lighter on the floor, or it seems to go heavier into the floor? Does it change a little bit of a sensation of moving forward or backwards? Where is there a variable that you can pay attention to? Many possibilities. Lovely. And then give up the constraint and roll to your back and rest. Which way would you do it? Same movements, different side. What was different for you? Different in the how, not the what, or how you went about it. And that's what we're listening to.
I think it would feel the same on each side.
It doesn't. Isn't that amazing? It feels different.
I never thought of it.
Yeah. I find that so interesting. The differences. How can that be? It's the same movement and yet has a total different personality.
When you do, the way you move on one side works better than on the other.
Sometimes it also surprises us. When we think it's going to be harder and then it's like, no, it's not. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's not. Roll back to this second side. And how long you stay on this other side, if you notice anything that is disquieting, get off of it sooner than later. You start with the knees stacked. Slide the leg back behind. And all you're going to do right now is to play with the movement where you redirect the knee towards the ceiling that brings the foot to stand. And then you lower it again. I'm going to call this like a swinging door. It swings open and then it closes, swing shut. And anything that you can do that you first notice, well, that's the first thing I did as I explored that movement. Do that several times to identify what you actually do. It might be in the way you organize through your torso, your head and eyes. Which direction do they go? Is it a sensation of rolling or twisting? Is it a sensation that you feel through your hip and your lower back? Notice how you breathe. And then once you notice what you actually do, can you do something different while you still maintain the same opening of the knee, standing the foot, and closing? Might it be in the orientation of your head and eyes? The foot, if it feels like it's not standing because it's slipping away, you can always slide it up toward closer to the pelvis to stand. It's a movement. It's not etched in stone. And then the next time you rest with the leg behind, you just pause there if it's comfortable enough, can the foot really rest? There you go. Notice when there's something that's holding. Many times we don't realize it because it's so familiar. And now could you reverse the movement where you are going to pivot on that knee so that to some little amount the foot and the lower leg lift in the direction of the ceiling, but it's only in a direction. You're listening more for an equality of comfort and ease versus doing something for size. And you'll do it in your pace many times. And you listen, do I allow my upper torso to move? What happens to my ribs? Do they make more contact with the floor or less when I pivot on the knee with the foot and lower leg in the direction of the ceiling? Is there also a little sense of rolling? And once you begin to identify what you are actually doing, the first or second or third approximation, really checking, yes, I'm doing that. Could you change it up a little bit? Might it be in where your eyes or your head go? Might it be in a sense of a rolling sensation or a twist? It's a variation. Might it be in the use of a hand that is pushed into a push-up position to push, to give more support? Maybe it's an arm you put long in front of you that you slide forward or back. There are many, many variations throughout many lessons you've attended. Are any of these patterns awakening in you like, oh, that's a variation? That's it. And then what if you began to alternate? Once you bring that foot to stand, knee towards the ceiling, and then you rotate it the opposite direction, foot towards the ceiling, knee to stand on. You just play with it in your range of ease and comfort and safety. The slower you go, you will notice where you need to slow down more or do less, or if you held your breath. And then use one of these movements to relinquish the position on your side and roll to your back. Notice your contact with the floor and what's changing or shifting. Can you remember what it felt like when you first laid down and what it feels like now? And roll back to the second side. Slide the leg in front. You know the pattern, but go with one first. Let's start with the first pattern. Please make sure first that knee and the thigh and the calf and the foot rest on the floor. There you go. Many people sleep like this, going to sleep. Comfortable. And begin to pivot so that the foot and lower leg move in the direction of the ceiling. You're pivoting on the knee, and then you lower it. You do that at least 3 times, but not as a rep. You just do them to feel, to associate, what am I doing? How am I doing it? How do I breathe? Where do my head and eyes go? What about the contact with the floor on the floor side? Do we just take it for granted? Can we pay attention? Is there a sense that something is according together someplace and other places things are widening or fanning apart? Is there a sense of any rolling? And in which direction if there's a sense of rolling? If you notice the sense of rolling in one direction, on a variation, could you a small amount roll or twist in the opposite direction? Just a little to see what that does. And then you pause in this position as long as comfortable, just to let that settle. And now you reverse so that the idea is you want to lift the knee in the direction of the ceiling so that the foot comes more into a standing position. But wherever it is, it's just beginning that process. Lovely. And remember, it's a movement. So if the foot slides up to come in a better standing position, why not? There you go. And do I use a hand in a push-up position or do I choose not to? Where does my head go? And then begin to alternate the movements with the leg in front. It's just a little bit of this, a little bit of that, so that you can now really compare, oh, they're different. Where are they different? Lovely. Leave it alone. Lie on your back and rest. Notice your contact with the floor. And slowly bring your feet to stand and keep them comfortably wide. Notice the first word I said was comfortably wide. And then very slowly, the first side you lied on, if you lied on your right side, it's the left leg I'm going to ask you to explore. If you lied on your left side, it's the right leg I'm going to ask you to explore. Slowly take the knee, the alternate knee from the side you lied on, and slowly begin to take the knee outward, bring it back to stand, and then take it inward. And you'll get an idea if your feet are spread wide enough. Because you want to be able to keep the foot that is standing as a support. But the other one is tilting inward and outward. It's the same movement you did on your side. And you just listen to the availability in that hip and how it speaks to your lower back. And does it move through you? Does your head participate? Shift in weight? And then now you bring that foot to quiet. It's going to be the support that stands. And the other foot, this would have been the second side of the leg that you explored the movements. You begin to tilt the knee inward and outward. Listening to, now the floor is giving you feedback in contact. Contact of your back versus just your side. And you feel that. How many of you remember We started the series with this movement.
We started what?
The series with this movement. We did it in sitting. We did it lying on our back. We forgot that already, didn't we? And then leave it alone. Lengthen your legs if comfortable, and rest. So I know that the series has not been continuous from week to week because of my schedule. And yet I've still kept with a certain schema. Feel your length, the contact you make. Notice what your hips feel like, or your lower back. Notice all of you. And then very slowly, bring your feet to stand, roll by way of one side, to transition to come fully to stand. When you come to stand, just be in that place for a moment to reevaluate now in the vertical. What does it feel like compared to when you were on the floor? Notice your hips. Notice your lower back. Notice your sense of being in the vertical, standing. And if you were going to be a kid again and you would even entertain it, what if you had a hula hoop? What would you do? A hula hoop. What would you do?
Your hips.
Move you. It's your ankles too, isn't it? It's all of you.
Used to be
And
good.
notice which direction you started your hula hoop in. Reverse it. And then you'll get a clear indication of why you started in the direction you started.
Okay, that takes some.
Yeah. All right, ladies. Thank you so much.